And I opened the doors and I looked inside and there was 2,000 people sitting in Zazen meditation.
My name is Charlotte Squire and I live in Golden Bay, Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I asked Pamela what she was doing when she was 23 years old. I'll tell you why I chose 23 later. And it turned out she had the most extraordinary story.
I'm called Pamela. My full name is Elizabeth Pamela Smith. And I'm 76 years old and I was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina in the USA. So right now we're in my son Theron Burgess's house in Takaka, New Zealand.
So the big question is, what were you doing when you were 23 years old?
Oh my, what a great year. That was a pivotal year in my life. I was at the University of Missouri and there was the freedom movement and the spiritual movement that was going on in San Francisco in the United States in 1969. Spent 2 years at university and then got the bug to join this spiritual movement and took myself to San Francisco. Kept hearing about this thing called Monday night class and people kept telling me, you've got to go to Monday night class. So eventually I did, and the first night I was there, I arrived late. It was at a ballroom on Highway 1 called the Family Dog, where the big acts like Jefferson Airplane and, Grateful Dead and all those people, they played in this huge ballroom. And when I got there and I opened the doors and I looked inside and there was 2,000 people sitting in Zazen meditation. After the meditation, the teacher, his name was Stephen Gaskin, and he was sitting on the stage and he began to talk, and he said he was talking about what was on the group mind. So he talked about sort of issues of the day, but it was mainly questioning the values of our culture. What do we believe in? Is this really true? And he talked a lot about how all the religions were essentially, in their true nature, saying the same thing, but in a different language for a different time and a different people. And that just really resonated with me. So I continued to go to Monday night class for I don't know how many months. And then at a point, Stephen was also a professor at San Francisco State. He was invited by an ecumenical council of ministers to travel around the country in 1970 and hold these meetings like we were having every Monday night. That was back in the day when people first started taking school buses and converting them into homes. And he and his family had taken a double-decker bus and done that. And so they were going to go off on this tour around the country. And we had all become so addicted in a way to this conversation that we were having. We said, well, what about us? And he said, well, get it together and come with me. So I ran out, bought a school bus, and I started retrofitting it. So on Columbus Day, 1970, there were 70 school buses and vans lined up along Highway 1. And so we did that. It took us about 9 months. We went all the way, did a big circle around the country. And so when we got back, Stephen said, look, we've become a community because babies were born on the Caravan. And we'd become really tight because you have to become really tight to pull something like that off. And he said, let's go plant ourselves. And when we'd gone through Tennessee has a lot of renegades and hillbillies and, they weren't too upset by us. So we found that land in Tennessee was very reasonable. So we pooled all of our resources. We did the Caravan in 70, bought the land in 71, moved our buses onto the land, and I was pregnant with my first child. And as I mentioned, we had midwives. So Ina May was Stephen's wife, and she is famous for writing the book Spiritual Midwifery. She was a very sort of academic, intellectual-minded person. She had lost her first child, she believed, through medical negligence in a hospital. She was very keen to study midwifery, and we were so fortunate when we landed in Tennessee because we met this wonderful Dr. Williams, and he agreed to be our doctor and to teach our midwives how to midwife. I'm 23 years old and I'm going into labor. And because of my background my father was in World War II and the Korean War. So he was severely traumatized by war. And that violence was taken out on my mother. And so I grew up with a lot of violence in my house. And so I was somebody who was sort of like always looking over my shoulder. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? You know. So I go into labor and I idolized Ida Mae, but I was also terrified of her. And so I'd made a decision that no matter what, I was gonna have a natural childbirth, you know, God willing. Well, I went through the first 24 hours and it was hell. It was excruciating. And she was there with me with another midwife, and I was extremely self-conscious because, you know, am I doing it right? You know, how do, you know, just like really into my head, not into my body at all. I just thought, oh my God, how am I ever gonna do this? And so at one point she said to me after 24 hours, she said, Pamela, if things don't change, you might have to go to the hospital. And I was kind of pissed at that point, and I was like, fine, just cut this baby out, you know? And then I walked out of my school bus and I looked up into the tree in the Tennessee sky, and I said, no. I made a commitment to myself and to this child that I would do this. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it somehow. And so I went back in. Ida Mae, in her wisdom, sent over a really dear friend of mine. Her name was Mary Crum. And she had big bosoms and a round belly, and she was very loose, and her babies just fell out of her. Christopher had fallen out of her while she was sitting on the toilet like 2 weeks prior. So Ida Mae sent her over to me, and she got in bed with me, skin to skin. And she said, Pamela, it's just like surfing. When the contractions come on, she said, you're gonna work really hard to get to the top of that wave. And then once you get to the crest of the contraction, you're gonna relax and breathe down. And it became fun. And so soon after Mary came, so did my son Nathaniel. And for somebody who had so little self-confidence, because of how I was raised, it gave me the strength that I needed to get through this life and to raise 5 children, mostly on my own.
Pamela went on to become a doula, and a doula is a birth support person, so they support people before, during and after the birth. So why did I choose 23? On the 23rd of September this year here in Golden Bay, I am launching a 1-year memoir writing course to guide people through the process of writing their life stories, family histories, one step at a time. So by September 2026, I expect a lot of that group to have a finished first draft of their stories if they keep writing. Can you go now?